From a time when West Haven's waters provided seafood and its land provided crops to the first settlers, to the thriving city of today, there is a house that has survived every era. From invasions by the British to the thrilling days of seafarers, from this nation's most dismal days to the shoreline's most exciting, the Ward-Heitmann house has stood as a symbol of strength and surprising family happiness for nearly 3 centuries. It stands today as a symbol of history from which all can learn. The story of this remarkable home can only be told through the eyes of a remarkable woman, Harriet North. Strolling the grounds at 92 years young, she holds dear nearly a century of fond memories in and around the home.
The house has lots of pleasant memories. I used to play over there, you know, with Peg. We'd play marbles and run our doll carriages up and down, and I can't just think of what we did play, but the games that kids do play, you know, hide and seek and mumbly peg and all that sort of thing.
While Harriet's first memories are of fun-filled frolics through the yard, the early years of the Ward-Heitmann house were filled with the struggles of settling a new country. The land on which the house was built was purchased by Ebenezer Brown in 1682. He left that parcel to his granddaughter, Rebecca Clark Humphreyville, in 1726. The Clarks and Humphreyvilles were 2 of West Haven's original settling families. Records indicate that Rebecca's husband, John Humphreyville, sold 12 acres and a mansion house to his brother-in-law, Ebenezer Clark, in 1736. Sometime during those first 50 years, the house was built, and that mansion mentioned in the records was most likely the Ward-Heitmann house. Those first days were simple ones, with hand-fashioned bowls and plates. The furniture was sturdy but plain. The house was built to handle the surprises of a new land. A door solid enough to keep out intruders. Even a tunnel that some say provided a family escape route if overrun by pirates or marauding Indians. The house even survived an invasion by the British during the Revolutionary War. It was a day that spawned one of West Haven's most famous stories.
When they got up to the green there, the Reverend Mr. Noah Williston, who was the pastor of the Congregational Church, lived in the parsonage over there. And of course the word came that the British were coming. So he was rushing over to go and try and rescue some of his papers from the church. And in his haste and everything, he fell crossing in a fence, I think, and broke his leg. And when Adjutant Campbell came along and he was lying there, some of the soldiers were ready to take their bayonets and running through, but he stopped them. He said, no, this is a man of the cloth, and he ordered his surgeon to set the leg. So you see, he was a West Haven man saved by a British enemy, you see. Well, anyway, of course, the lot went on, and they had little skirmishes that day. They went on up what is now Main Street. It was called South Street then, and went up to what is now First Avenue. And of course, they went all the way up to Allingtown. And it was up in Allingtown where they veered over to the right, and they were going towards New Haven. And of course, Adjutant Campbell was very resplendent in his crimson uniform, and he was marching along there, and a man, they said his name was Johnson, but we don't know. But anyway, they picked him off and he was killed.
A monument to Campbell's memory stands today. The Ward-Heitmann house stands as well, while other houses that invasion day burned. The Wards were the next family to call this house their home, a family with a strong tie to the sea and a strong impact on West Haven history. Captain Thomas Ward purchased the house in 1788. Other members of the Ward family, who were also prominent in the shipping industry, owned properties at the intersection of Elm Street and Campbell Avenue. Because of that, the area was known as Ward's Corners.
Now, I remember seeing the things that the Wards had that they had brought back from their voyages, you know, wherever. And the things that I was very impressed, because in our house we certainly didn't have, these magnificent paintings, and I often think about them. And I remember a huge brass elephant of some kind of huge thing that he brought back. I remember that, and then I remember a great big grandfather clock, the kind that had the moon and stars on the top, you know, English, beautiful things.
So the Wards were well-to-do?
Very well-to-do.
One writing gives a unique and early picture of the Ward brothers.
On one occasion during the War of 1812, Jacob Ward accompanied Thomas and Henry Ward to New York to buy a brig. On their way, the trio stopped overnight at Hart's Island, and resuming their journey, after rowing several hours, discovered that their money, a considerable sum which had been carried by Thomas, was missing. Returning to Hart's Island, they were overjoyed to find it under a pillow in the hotel, where it had been placed for safekeeping the previous night.
While not as swashbuckling a story as their voyages to the West Indies, it does give an early picture of the Wards, who became prominent West Haven citizens because of their sea trade and shipbuilding. Elegant homes and comfortable lifestyles describe the setting at Ward's Corners. The house changed hands from the Wards to the Heitmanns as Louisa Ward married Adrian C. Heitmann. It was their daughter Henrietta who made the next major change to the house. This is where she opened the Dame School for Girls in the latter part of the 19th century.
The little building on the back of the house there was where Miss Heitmann had her scholars. Maybe she'd had a little more education than some, I don't know.
The Pickett family next owned the home. It was during this era that Harriet North's first memories were shaped.
The Picketts had 3 daughters, Virginia, Dorothy, and Peggy. They were all friends of mine, of course. And later they had a son, Mansfield, and they lived there. And then I used to play with them, you know, and I could tell you about in the yard. We used to go out and swing on the branches of the willow trees, and Peggy and I played together. And they had a lovely dog named Fluffy, a big collie that we always had.
This was the heyday of Savin Rock Park, an entertainment center that drew hundreds of thousands of visitors to West Haven while touching history in both the 19th and 20th centuries.
They had all these stands, you know, where you'd throw a ball or a hoop over something and win a Cupid doll or whatever. And I think they were all controlled with a little pedal on the thing. And every so often they'd give somebody a lovely thing and they'd walk around the rock, you know, and say, look what I won. And then everybody rush over to, you know, do it. And anyway, but they made a lot of money. They had all kinds of things, a Ferris wheel and a roller coaster. You've seen all these pictures, of course.
While Harriet remembers her playful youth, she also remembers the charm of the Ward-Heitmann house as the stepping stone, the 1920s antique shop of Marie Gowan Armstrong.
She was a fascinating woman, and I was a young girl then, and I was just about out of high school, and I went to Yale Art School, and Marie had a shop in the house, and also another one over there on Chapel Street. I learned so much from her. She was a fascinating woman, lovely.
In the 1930s, the Ward-Heitmann house became known for Miss Hamilton's Tea Room. Then, in the 40s, came foreign correspondent Fred Fennessy, who, to the good fortune of history lovers, restored the house.
He bought beautiful, beautiful antiques from a man named Charlie Montgomery, who had a place up in Wallingford. And Charles Montgomery had a apple orchard up there. It was up sort of back of, you know, Oakdale Theater. And he went up there, and he had lots of money to spend. He really furnished the place with lovely, lovely things.
A decade later, there was the sale to Dr. and Mrs. Nicholas Milano, whose love of history preserved the home and led to it becoming a gift of trust of the National Trust for Historic Preservation. Now, every part of this house is ready to tell a tale, weaving a story that spans more than 3 centuries. Along the way, some secrets may be revealed. Secrets of the colorful past of the Ward-Heitmann house.